So let's delve into a theory that took years to percolate within the Game of Thrones fandom. A theory that, when finally substantiated, felt both stunningly original and yet somehow preordained. Rhaegar plus Lyanna equals Jon, or as it's popularly abbreviated RPLJ, stands as arguably the most celebrated and widely discussed of all Game of Thrones theories, and for good reason. Throughout much of the show's run, the true parentage of the figure we knew as Jon Snow remained one of its most tantalizing enigmas. Was he truly just the bastard son of Ned Stark, a product of some youthful indiscretion? Or was there a more profound, more consequential narrative woven into the tapestry of his existence? By the concluding seasons, we finally received our answer, delivered with a dramatic flourish that sent shockwaves through the fanbase. This character, long assumed to be Ned's illegitimate offspring, was, in reality, the progeny of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, a scion born of fire and ice, the symbolic union of two powerful houses locked in a historical dance of conflict and alliance. This revelation wasn't merely a plot twist designed for shock value. It fundamentally reshaped our understanding of Jon Snow, his place in the world, and the very destiny that lay before him. But for years, astute fans had harbored suspicions, meticulously piecing together clues gleaned from both the pages of George R.R. Martin's books and the visual storytelling of the television adaptation. The story truly begins at the Tower of Joy, a location steeped in mystery, imbued with sorrow and charged with emotional weight. It is here, in the aftermath of Robert's rebellion and the devastating fall of the Targaryen dynasty, that Ned Stark finds his sister Lyanna on the verge of death, having just given birth. In her final, fading moments, she entrusts him with a secret, a burden that would irrevocably alter the course of Westerosi history, the true identity of her child. This moment transcended the simple act of a promise to protect a vulnerable infant. It was a solemn pledge to safeguard the legacy of two great houses, to conceal it from a world that was demonstrably unprepared for its implications. Ned, a man renowned for his unwavering honor, a virtue that often served as both his greatest strength and his tragic flaw, upheld that promise even at the cost of personal sacrifice. He lied to everyone, even to his own wife, Catelyn, raising the boy as his own bastard, perpetuating the fiction that he was the product of an extramarital affair. For years, this deception generated palpable tension within the Stark household, particularly with Catelyn, who, understandably, couldn't forgive what she perceived as a profound betrayal. However, as the theory gained traction and was ultimately confirmed by the show, it became clear that Ned wasn't acting out of dishonor. He was protecting the child from a far greater, more terrifying danger: the incandescent wrath of Robert Baratheon. Robert, driven by a consuming rage fueled by the loss of Lyanna and the perceived treachery of Rhaegar, had made it his unwavering mission to eradicate any remaining vestiges of the Targaryen bloodline. The implications of Jon's true parentage reverberate through the entire narrative of Game of Thrones. As the legitimate son of Rhaegar, he possesses a stronger claim to the Iron Throne than virtually anyone else, including Daenerys Targaryen, who spends much of the series operating under the assumption that she is the last surviving member of her line. However, this newfound legitimacy also generates profound internal conflict within Jon. He was raised as a Stark, fiercely loyal to the North, where the notion of suddenly embracing a Targaryen heritage feels alien, almost a betrayal of everything he holds dear. Despite learning the truth, he continues to view himself as Ned's son, embodying the values of honor, duty, and selflessness that Ned so carefully instilled in him. This conflict between upbringing and birthright becomes central to his character arc. On one hand, he is inextricably connected to the North, where he served with distinction as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch and later as King in the North, a title bestowed upon him by grateful Northerners. On the other hand, his Targaryen blood irrevocably ties him to the ancient prophecies that drive much of the overarching storyline, particularly the prophecy of Azor Ahai, the prince who was promised. Many believe that Jon is the reincarnation of this legendary figure, destined to save the world from an encroaching darkness. The Azor Ahai prophecy dictates that a hero will be reborn to combat the Long Night, wielding a flaming sword called Lightbringer to vanquish the others, the terrifying beings also known as White Walkers. With his unique combination of Stark and Targaryen heritage, Jon is seen by many as the ultimate embodiment of this prophecy. His Valyrian blood connects him to dragons and fire, while his Sty lineage represents the icy north, the very origin point of the greatest threat facing Westeros. This duality positions him as the literal Song of Ice and Fire, a living representation of the book series title. But even beyond the realm of prophecies, Jon's connection to the Targaryens grants him a unique and special relationship with dragons. When Daenerys arrives in Westeros with her 3 dragons, Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion, we witness Jon interacting with them in a way that no one else can, save for Daenerys herself. Dragons, creatures of immense power and fiercely independent spirits, are known to be exceptionally loyal to those with Valyrian blood. Jon's ability to connect with them, particularly Rhaegal, is a direct and undeniable nod to his heritage. It's no mere coincidence that Rhaegal, named after Rhaegar, allows Jon to ride him into battle, solidifying his claim to the Targaryen legacy. This newfound identity also fundamentally alters how the characters around him perceive him. Daenerys, for example, spends much of the final season grappling with the unsettling fact that Jon possesses a superior claim to the Iron Throne than she does. But it's not solely about lineage. It's also about the inherent qualities he possesses as a leader. He is beloved by the North, admired for his unwavering bravery, and respected for his willingness to prioritize the well-being of the realm above his own personal desires. These are qualities that Daenerys sees in herself, but they are qualities that others increasingly recognize and value in Jon. Still, despite his birthright, Jon remains deeply conflicted about his role in the larger political landscape. Even after learning the truth about his parentage, he never actively seeks power for himself. His unwavering focus remains on defeating the White Walkers and safeguarding Westeros from this existential threat. In this way, he remains true to the man he has always been, someone who values the greater good above his own personal ambitions. This reluctance to embrace his Targaryen lineage, even when it would demonstrably benefit him, speaks volumes about the complexity of his character. He doesn't define himself by his bloodline, but by his actions, by his choices, by the values he upholds. What makes the J theory so compelling, so enduring, is not merely the confirmation of his true parentage, but how it profoundly redefines his journey as a character. He has always been searching for identity, grappling with his place in the world. He began as the bastard of Winterfell, perpetually on the outside looking in, grew into a respected leader at the Wall, and eventually became king in the North. Yet throughout his journey, he struggled with fundamental questions about where he truly belonged. Was he a Stark? A Targaryen? The answer, it turns out, is both. And yet deep down in his heart of hearts, he remains a man of the North, forever shaped by the values and traditions he learned in Winterfell. In the end, the confirmation of his parentage adds layers of depth and nuance to his story, but it doesn't fundamentally alter who he is at his core. The boy who grew up believing he was a bastard ultimately becomes one of the most important figures in Westeros, but it's his unwavering sense of honor and his unwavering commitment to doing what's right that define him, not his bloodline. While Jon's true parentage reshaped our understanding of one of the central characters in Game of Thrones. Another story, equally intricate and potentially just as consequential, has quietly unfolded in the shadows, driven by whispers and secret plots. This brings us to one of the most elaborate and long-running conspiracies in the entire series, the Varys Illyrio conspiracy. Like Jon's relatively clear-cut lineage, this theory plunges us deep into the treacherous world of political gamesmanship that defines Westeros, with Varys the Spider at its very center. The Master of Whisperers has always operated with an air of enigma, his motives, at least on the surface, seeming to align with maintaining balance and stability within the realm. But for years, fans have suspected that there was far more to his intentions than simply serving the current monarch. At the heart of this theory lies the idea that Varys, in conjunction with Illyrio Mopatis, has been orchestrating events from the very beginning to ensure the return of the Targaryens to power. This theory gained considerable traction after the two were observed plotting in the dungeons beneath King's Landing, their conversation, subtle as it may have been, hinting at a grander scheme that had been in motion for years, perhaps even decades. To truly understand this theory, we need to examine the key players involved. Varys, a eunuch with a shadowy past, is a man whose true loyalties were always shrouded in mystery. Illyrio Mopatis, a wealthy merchant from Pentos, might seem like an unlikely ally, but their friendship runs deep, and together they have been pulling strings across both Westeros and Essos, subtly manipulating events in favor of the Targaryens. One of the most significant events tied to their conspiracy is Daenerys' marriage to Khal Drogo. While on the surface, this union appeared to be merely a way for Viserys Targaryen to acquire an army to retake the Iron Throne, it's clear that larger, more meticulously crafted plans were at play. Daenerys' rise as a leader, her growing strength, and her eventual emergence as a conqueror were something they anticipated and possibly even nurtured, carefully laying the groundwork for her success. But their conspiracy doesn't end with Daenerys. The introduction of another Targaryen claimant, Aegon, further complicates matters. Aegon, who in the books is presented as the son of Rhaegar Targaryen, is believed by many fans to be an integral part of this grand plan. The theory suggests that Aegon is not a true Targaryen at all, but rather a carefully constructed puppet, meticulously placed by Varys and Illyrio to fulfill their own ambitions. This particular aspect of the theory is especially intriguing because it challenges the very notion of legitimacy and what it truly means to rule. Is Aegon truly the son of Rhaegar, or is he a Blackfyre, a descendant of a Targaryen offshoot with a long-standing claim to the throne? Varys' involvement in the Aegon storyline becomes even more apparent as the series progresses. Throughout the show, the Master of Whisperers presents himself as a man of the people, deeply concerned with the welfare of the realm. But the theory suggests that this is only a carefully crafted facade, a smokescreen designed to conceal his true intentions. His loyalty lies not with the realm itself, but with the restoration of Targaryen rule, a goal he has been working towards for years, operating in the shadows, planting seeds of dissent, and subtly manipulating events to his advantage. Conversations with Illyrio, particularly in the dungeons of King's Landing, revealed that the groundwork for a Targaryen restoration had been meticulously laid long before anyone in Westeros was even aware of Daenerys or Aegon's existence. This long-term planning, this unwavering commitment to a single, overarching goal, is what makes the Varys-Illyrio conspiracy so compelling. One of the more compelling aspects of this conspiracy is the way it reframes Varys' actions throughout the series. From the very beginning, he seemed to be working against the Lannisters, subtly undermining their rule while positioning himself as a trusted advisor. But if we look closely, every action he takes can be interpreted as part of a larger strategy to weaken the ruling houses of Westeros, making it easier for a Targaryen to reclaim the Iron Throne. His manipulation of key figures like Ned Stark and Tyrion Lannister isn't just about maintaining balance, it's about clearing the path for the return of the dragon. Even his decision to flee Westeros at the end of Season 4 after helping Tyrion escape fits neatly into this theory. By leaving at that particular moment, Varys ensures that he is free to continue his work with Illyrio, setting the stage for Aegon's arrival and solidifying the Targaryen claim to the throne. It's also important to consider the role Varys played in advising Daenerys later in the series. While he pledges his loyalty to her, his motivations remain unclear. Is he truly working for the good of the realm, or is he simply positioning Daenerys, and by extension Aegon, for a greater role in the Game of Thrones, carefully manipulating events to ensure their ultimate victory? This conspiracy also highlights the inherent secrecy that surrounds Varys' true goals. The Master of Information utilizes a vast network of spies, his little birds, to gather intelligence and remain several steps ahead of everyone else. This control over information grants him immense power, but it also allows him to conceal his true motives, operating in the shadows, always one step ahead of the game. Throughout the series, we're led to believe that Varys is a man without personal ambition, a selfless servant of the realm, but this theory suggests otherwise. His ambition, while not for personal power in the traditional sense, is to reshape the political landscape of Westeros, placing the Targaryens, or those he claims are Targaryens, back on the Iron Throne. Illyrio's role in this conspiracy is equally important. As a wealthy and influential figure in Essos, he provides the resources necessary for Varys' plans to succeed. His connections to the Golden Company, a mercenary army with ties to the Blackfyres, further complicate the theory, suggesting that Aegon's legitimacy may be a fabrication designed to garner support for his claim. Together, Varys and Illyrio represent a partnership built on secrecy, manipulation, and long-term planning, using both Westeros and Essos as their chessboard, carefully moving pieces into position. As fans of Game of Thrones have debated for years, the central question remains, what is Varys' ultimate endgame? Is he simply trying to restore the Targaryens to power, or does he have a deeper, more personal goal driving his actions? The Varys-Illyrio conspiracy forces us to reconsider the true nature of power in Westeros and to question whether the people pulling the strings behind the scenes are the real players in the Game of Thrones. In the end, this theory, like many others, is built on a foundation of speculation, careful observation, and meticulous analysis of the available evidence. While the show revealed much about Varys' character, it left many questions unanswered, especially regarding his true loyalties and long-term goals. What we do know is that he is a man who thrives in the shadows, and if the theory holds any truth, his plans may have been far more elaborate, far more ambitious than we ever realized. As we unravel the intricate tapestry of secret plots within Game of Thrones, another pivotal conspiracy emerges, one that involves one of the most strategic minds in Westeros, the Purple Wedding. This theory proposes that the assassination of Joffrey Baratheon at his own wedding was not merely a random act of vengeance, but rather an event known and perhaps even orchestrated by his own grandfather, Tywin Lannister. The idea that Joffrey's death was more than just an opportunistic murder is supported by the deeply complicated relationship between the young king and his formidable grandfather. From the very beginning of Joffrey's reign, it was abundantly clear that he was uncontrollable, unpredictable, and far too impulsive to effectively govern the Seven Kingdoms. His cruel and capricious behavior, from tormenting Sansa Stark to ordering the execution of Ned Stark, directly clashed with Tywin's carefully constructed plans for stability and power. The Boy King's reckless actions had already set off a chain reaction of events that plunged Westeros into chaos, and his volatility showed no signs of abating. For someone as calculated, as pragmatic as Tywin Lannister, it must have been painfully obvious that keeping Joffrey on the throne would only lead to further instability, ultimately jeopardizing the Lannister dynasty's hold on power. The boy's decision to execute Ned Stark, for example, was done in direct defiance of Tywin's wishes. That rash act ignited the Northern Rebellion, transforming the Starks from uneasy allies into full-fledged enemies of the crown. Joffrey's inherent unpredictability made it impossible for his grandfather to control the realm with the precision, the efficiency, and the ruthlessness that he desired. This simmering tension between the two characters is laid bare in several key scenes leading up to the Purple Wedding. In one particularly revealing exchange, Joffrey attempts to assert his authority over the head of House Lannister, only to be swiftly and dismissively put in his place. The scene underscores the fundamental truth that the real power in Westeros lies not with the boy wearing the crown, but with the man pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Joffrey may have been the king, but his manifest inability to rule effectively was obvious to everyone, none more so than his own grandfather. The theory suggests that, recognizing his grandson's inherent weaknesses, Tywin viewed Joffrey as a liability, a loose cannon that needed to be removed to ensure the long-term stability of the Lannister dynasty. And who better to replace the erratic king than his younger brother, Tommen, a far more malleable and gentle figure who could be easily influenced and guided? With Tommen on the throne, the Lannister patriarch could effectively rule the kingdom without the constant chaos and unpredictability that Joffrey so often brought to the court, undermining Tywin's carefully laid plans. Subtle signs support this theory, pointing to the distinct possibility that Joffrey's death was not entirely unexpected by his grandfather. Before the wedding, Tywin appears far more focused on securing advantageous marriage alliances and solidifying his family's long-term power than on addressing the increasingly unstable behavior of the king. Despite Joffrey's cruel antics throughout the feast, mocking guests, threatening Tyrion, and tormenting Sansa, Tywin remains calm, almost unruffled by the escalating tensions. His focus seems to be elsewhere, suggesting that the death of the king might not come as such a surprise to him. In the aftermath of the assassination, the reactions of those closest to Joffrey are starkly different. While Cersei is utterly devastated, consumed with rage and grief, Tywin quickly shifts his attention to Tommen. A strikingly cold and pragmatic moment, he escorts the boy away from the chaos of the feast to have a quiet, almost instructive conversation about kingship and what truly makes a ruler strong. Rather than grieving, Tywin sees Joffrey's death as an opportunity to groom a new king, one who will listen to him, respect his wisdom, and, above all, follow his guidance. It's also worth noting that Olenna Tyrell, later revealed to be the one responsible for the poisoning, had her own compelling reasons for eliminating Joffrey. The Queen of Thorns was deeply concerned about her granddaughter Margaery being married to someone as volatile, as unpredictable, and as inherently cruel as Joffrey. In Olenna's mind, killing Joffrey was a necessary step to protect her family's interests and ensure Marjorie's safety. However, it's possible that she wasn't acting entirely alone. Given the mutual benefits that both houses gained from Joffrey's removal, one can easily imagine a scenario where Tywin either subtly encouraged or turned a blind eye to Olenna's plot, allowing her to carry out the deed while maintaining plausible deniability. Another key moment that adds fuel to this theory is how quickly Tywin moves past the murder and focuses on security and stability in the future. His ability to detach emotionally from the death of his own grandson, while others around him are consumed with rage and confusion, hints at a deeper understanding of what truly matters: power and stability. In the Lannister world, nothing supersedes the survival and success of the family, even if that means sacrificing a member who stands in the way. Joffrey's death also provided a convenient means of dealing with another problem: Tyrion. During this, Tyrion, for a man with Tommen in many after ultimate in West, while known as behind the edits for the to fully the bolt. Meanwhile, however, according Rob's to these rather than Stan, by letting the conspiracy becomes even more intriguing when we consider the pink letter, a mysterious message sent to Jon Snow at the Wall, purportedly from Ramsay Bolton. The letter taunts Jon, challenging him to come south and fight for Winterfell, promising him pain and suffering. While it's signed in Ramsay's name, many fans believe that it was actually written by someone else, perhaps the Northern Lords themselves, hoping to draw Jon into the conflict, setting the stage for his return to power. Their goal, according to the theory, was to lure him back into the North so that he could take his rightful place as their leader, as the king in the North who would finally unite the region against the tyranny of the Boltons. One of the key elements of this theory is the steadfast loyalty the northern houses have for the Starks, even after the fall of Winterfell. Many of these houses remained loyal to the Stark name, biding their time, waiting patiently until a true heir could rise to reclaim their ancestral home. Characters like Wyman Manderly, Lord of White Harbor, are central to this conspiracy. Manderly's actions, which include feigning loyalty to the Boltons while secretly plotting against them, demonstrate the lengths to which these lords were willing to go to restore Stark leadership. Lord Manderly, in particular, becomes a pivotal figure in the conspiracy. In one memorable scene from the books, he serves Ramsay Bolton a pie made from Freys, the family responsible for the Red Wedding. This act of revenge, though subtle and symbolic, is a clear sign of where his true loyalty lies. Manderly's cunning and patience make him a key player in orchestrating the eventual downfall of the Boltons and the return of a Stark leader to the north. Beyond loyalty, Robb's will also played a significant role in this plot. Naming Jon as his heir was a bold move that not only defied convention but also highlighted Robb's deep-seated belief in his brother's abilities. Robb knew that Jon possessed the strength, the honor, and the leadership skills necessary to unite the North, even if Jon himself was reluctant to embrace that role. The will gave the Northern Lords a legitimate reason to back Jon, even if it meant defying the ruling powers of the time, openly challenging the authority of the Iron Throne. Another key aspect of the conspiracy is how the Northern Lords used deception to mask their true intentions. By outwardly supporting the Boltons or Stannis, they avoided immediate retribution while secretly waiting for the opportune moment to make their move. This strategy allowed them to bide their time, gather their forces, and avoid drawing unnecessary attention to their ultimate goal, crowning Jon as king in the North. The theory also delves into the ways in which the Northern Lords manipulated events to create chaos for the Boltons. Small acts of rebellion, strategic alliances, and misinformation spread throughout the region were all designed to weaken the ruling powers and undermine their authority. These subtle tactics were part of a larger plan to destabilize the Boltons' control over Winterfell, paving the way for a true Stark heir to return and reclaim their birthright. When Jon Snow is eventually declared king in the North, the culmination of this conspiracy is finally realized. The Northern Lords' unwavering loyalty to House Stark, their subtle manipulations, and their refusal to bend the knee to outside forces all come together in this defining moment. It is a victory not just for Jon, but for the entire North, which had remained steadfast in its determination to see a Stark once again rule from Winterfell. But this conspiracy isn't just about restoring a Stark to power, it's about the values that define the North. The lords involved in the plot embody the ideals of honor, loyalty, and independence. They were not willing to submit to the whims of southern rulers or bend to tyrants like Ramsay Bolton. For them, the North was more than just a region. It was a way of life, and they needed a leader who truly understood and respected that. The Great Northern Conspiracy reminds us that in Westeros, power is rarely gained through brute force alone. Cunning, patience, and unwavering loyalty are often the keys to success, and in this case, the Northern Lords used all three to restore a Stark to Winterfell, their ancestral home. Their quiet rebellion, hidden behind layers of deception and loyalty, ultimately led to the return of a rightful king, one who would lead the North not just with strength, but with honor, with compassion, and with a deep understanding of the values that define their people. As the Northern Lords quietly plotted their rebellion, another family was weaving a web of its own in King's Landing, one that would ultimately bring down one of the most powerful figures in Westeros, known as the Grand Tyrell Conspiracy. This theory suggests that the Tyrells, led by the cunning Olenna Tyrell, orchestrated the downfall of Cersei Lannister by subtly manipulating the High Sparrow and the Faith Militant, effectively clearing the path for Margaery to take control and establish House Tyrell as the dominant force in the realm. For years, the Tyrells had been at odds with Cersei, each maneuvering for power and influence within the royal court. While Cersei was driven by her unwavering desire to maintain Lannister dominance, the Tyrells saw an opportunity to elevate their own status by strategically aligning themselves with the Baratheons through marriage. The rivalry between these two formidable women, Cersei and Margaery, became a central conflict within the capital, with each trying to outmaneuver the other at every turn, using their respective strengths and resources to gain an advantage. Margaery's initial marriage to King Renly Baratheon was the first move in the Tyrells' strategic rise to power. Though Renly's claim to the throne was short-lived, it positioned Margaery as a viable queen, a woman of both beauty and political acumen, ready to seize any opportunity that presented itself. After Renly's death, the Tyrells wasted no time in quickly aligning themselves with the Lannisters by marrying Margaery to King Joffrey. This union solidified their position at court, placing Margaery in line to become Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, further cementing their influence and their reach within the highest echelons of power. However, the marriage also intensified Cersei's animosity toward the Tyrells, as she saw Margaery not just as a political rival, but as a direct threat to her own influence over her son, the young king. The rivalry between Cersei and Margaery only deepened after Joffrey's death and Margaery's subsequent marriage to Tommen Baratheon. With each marriage, Margaery came closer to securing her place as queen, while Cersei's control over her son Tommen began to slip. The younger queen's charm and influence over the boy king were undeniable, and it was obvious to everyone, including Cersei, that Margaery was positioning herself as a key player in the realm, not just a figurehead, but a true power broker. But Olenna Tyrell, the true mastermind behind the family's rise, saw that Cersei would never relinquish power willingly, that she would fight tooth and nail to maintain her grip on the Iron Throne. Olenna's sharp political mind understood that removing Cersei from the equation was a necessary step for her granddaughter to succeed and for House Tyrell to fully ascend to the top of the political ladder. And so the Tyrell matriarch set her sights on a more subtle approach, one that would use Cersei's own arrogance, her own paranoia, and her own insatiable thirst for power against her, turning her greatest strengths into her most crippling weaknesses. Enter the High Sparrow. While the High Sparrow appeared to be a humble, devout leader of the Faith Militant, his rise to power was carefully manipulated by the Tyrells, particularly Olenna. By encouraging the Faith's resurgence in King's Landing, the Tyrells laid the groundwork for Cersei's eventual downfall, giving her the tools to destroy herself. The High Sparrow's growing influence provided the perfect tool for dismantling Cersei's control without the need for open conflict, allowing them to operate in the shadows, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Cersei, in her desperation to rid herself of Margaery and the Tyrells, made a crucial mistake. She aligned herself with the Faith Militant, believing that she could use the religious group to remove her rivals from power. What Cersei didn't realize was that she was walking straight into Olenna's carefully constructed trap. By arming the Faith and empowering the High Sparrow, Cersei inadvertently gave her enemies the means to turn against her, providing them with the resources and the authority to undermine her power and ultimately bring about her downfall. The plan came to a head when Margaery and Loras Tyrell were arrested by the Faith on charges of immorality and perversion. At first, it seemed as though Cersei had won. Her rivals were imprisoned, their influence diminished, and she could breathe a sigh of relief, believing that she had finally outmaneuvered the Tyrells. However, the Tyrell's influence on the High Sparrow was stronger than it appeared. Olenna's behind-the-scenes maneuvering ensured that Margaery's position at court would remain secure, and soon the tables turned on Cersei. Cersei, who had orchestrated Margaery and Loras's imprisonment, found herself facing the same fate. The High Sparrow, empowered by Cersei's own actions, turned his attention to her sins, arresting the Queen Mother for her past transgressions, exposing her secrets to the world. The scene that followed, Cersei's walk of atonement through the streets of King's Landing, was one of the most humiliating moments in her life, and it marked the beginning of her irreversible downfall, stripping her of her power and exposing her vulnerability to all. Olenna's brilliance lay in her ability to weaponize Cersei's arrogance and short-sightedness. She understood that Cersei's unyielding desire for control would blind her to the potential consequences of aligning herself with the faith, clouding her judgment and leading her down a path of self-destruction. By allowing Cersei to make the first move, Olenna ensured that the Queen Mother's own actions would ultimately lead to her own destruction, leaving Margaery's path to the throne clear and unchallenged. The Tyrell matriarch had effectively used Cersei as a pawn in her own downfall, all while keeping Margaery's path to the throne clear, her rise seemingly unstoppable. Margaery, meanwhile, played her role to perfection. While Cersei was locked in a bitter power struggle with the faith, Margaery feigned piety, aligning herself with the High Sparrow to ensure her release from prison and solidify her position as queen. Her calculated humility earned her the High Sparrow's favor, allowing her to maintain her position as queen, exert influence over the young king, and solidify the Tyrell's grip on power. With Tommen firmly under her influence, Margaery was poised to rule the realm through her young husband, while Cersei's power continued to crumble, her influence fading with each passing day. The Grand Tyrell conspiracy showcases Olenna Tyrell's unmatched political acumen. By using Cersei's own weaknesses against her, Olenna secured her family's place in the highest echelons of power, all while maintaining an air of innocence and respectability. The Tyrells' long-standing rivalry with the Lannisters was ultimately won not through open conflict, but through careful manipulation, strategic alliances, and a deep understanding of the Game of Thrones. But the Tyrells' rise was not without cost. While Olenna successfully orchestrated Cersei's temporary downfall, the Queen Mother's eventual return to power was swift and brutal. In one of the most devastating moments of the series, Cersei, now driven by vengeance and fueled by a burning desire for retribution, destroyed the Great Sept of Baelor, killing Margaery, Loras, and the High Sparrow in one fiery explosion. This act of destruction marked the end of the Tyrells' influence in King's Landing, as Olenna lost both her grandchildren in an instant, her carefully laid plans reduced to ashes. Yet even in the face of such a devastating loss, Olenna remained defiant, refusing to succumb to despair. In her final moments, she delivered one last blow to House Lannister, confessing to Jaime that it was she who poisoned Joffrey at the Purple Wedding, a final act of defiance, a final assertion of her power. Her admission served as a reminder of just how far Olenna was willing to go to protect her family and of the length she had gone to in order to secure their future, ensuring that House Tyrell would not be forgotten. The Grand Tie